Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. If you're feeling that your business isn't where it should be at this time, and I always go with the gut, the intuition, inside here that you should be way ahead of the game now, even personally, but it's not happening. And you haven't figured out exactly why that is. This gentleman can definitely help you with that, with decades of experience, business experience in creating and delivering measurable results. And that's the key here in helping people move their lives and their businesses forward. We're going to talk about the PQ approach today. I'm going to be fully transparent. I have no idea what that is, but he does, and it helps people all the time. Steve Callender joins us. Welcome back, Steve. How are you?
I'm thriving.
I'm happy to hear that. I will be. I'm close to that once I find out what the PQ approach is to coaching. Now, the PQ, is this something that you gravitate to many times when you're helping people?
I'd say pretty much every time.
Okay.
Because it is just remarkably effective. It's so simple, in fact, that last week I was teaching a little program as part of a jobs program at Nash Community College, and I had 8 guys who were in this jobs training program. I taught the basics of positive intelligence, PQ, to them. They got it immediately and all started using it immediately. And it made a difference in the rest of the class as I taught it.
Wow. So you're talking about even just at that moment on the fly, you taught it to them and they got something out of it that fast?
Yes, absolutely. What I taught them was basically the framework of it. The framework of positive intelligence mental fitness program is basically that you've got saboteurs in your head. Okay. All of the negative thinking that we do when we are stressed, when we're stressing ourselves, it can all be identified or personified as one of the saboteurs. Like, for instance, everybody has a pretty harsh self-critic in their heads. It's the voice in your head that says, "Oh, you're not good. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not old enough, or you're too old." It's just always judging you. And that gets in the way of your thinking, really. Because what I do, essentially, the core of it in just a few words, is I help my clients think differently to get better results. It's not just what you think, it's how you think. So when the saboteur is attacking you, telling you, no, you're not good enough. This is awful. This person isn't, when the saboteur is doing that to you, what you do is you intercept that saboteur and you get into a state, which is a lot like mindfulness meditation, actually, where you're centered in the here and now. When you bring yourself using one of your senses fully into the present moment, so that it de-stresses you. Because actually, the way our brains work, when you're centered, focused completely in the here and now, you're not worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. You're not afflicted by anything that may have just happened to you or that happened years and years ago that's still bothering you.
I'm totally on your page. I have to tell you. And 2 points here, the saboteurs in your mind. I went on a men's retreat over the weekend. Other side of the country, never done anything like it. I joined a group and it's been fantastic. Great new relationships, hearing from other guys, men, what they're dealing with. And I just signed up to do this retreat. And one of the things they talked about was the chattering monkeys in your head. And it's essentially what, where we're going with this, where if you've ever seen, on TV, a zoo, whatever, it's like, and they're going back and forth and you can't even get clarity. And I do want to share with you, to illustrate your point, in my journey 3 years ago, I met somebody and she said to me, "Why don't you ever live in the moment?" And I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, what do you mean? Why don't you ever live in the moment? And it took me some time to process that, but I realized that just what you're saying,
Mhm.
think about the past, I think about the future. I'm never here. And when you're here at this very time, slice this moment right here, right now, forget about all this over here. Everything's good. Everything's
Mhm.
fantastic because you're not worrying about
It
this.
sure is.
Doesn't mean we forget about the
Right.
past and the future, and you can address that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's not, putting your hands over your ears and saying, la, la, la,
Right.
la, la, I'm going to ignore this. It's not that. It's retreating, yes, but it's finding a source of inner calm and full attention. Because when you're in the present moment, when you're in the here and now, you're unable to feel stress. It just doesn't work like that. All the stress that we have is done by ourselves to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very, very quick way you can get into the here and now. And I teach my coaching clients that. It's basically you focus on one sense, all your effort, all your attention, everything focused on one thing. When they teach meditation, sometimes you might use a burning candle. I think they even have some apps for that you
Hmm.
can have on your phone to have, a waterfall, a babbling brook, a candle, something like that. But I taught these guys how to get into the present moment and how to relieve their own stress so that they could deal with whatever's in front of them better. And one of them said that he used it overnight. The person that he lives with was in the mood for a fight and was trying to push all his buttons. And he said that he just kept doing these PQ reps. So he was paying attention to her. He was listening, but he wasn't affected by it in the emotional way that he usually is. It sort of bounced off him, like rain off a duck. And he was able to have a very good conversation with this person that he lived with, who started out trying to push all his buttons.
Hmm.
So that's essentially what I do. I help people think differently to get better results. And the PQ mental fitness program is the most effective and efficient way to do that I've found in all my years of coaching.
Wow. Wow. PQ stands for?
Positive intelligence.
Okay.
Sort of like IQ is general intelligence and EQ is emotional intelligence. This
Gotcha.
is positive intelligence is PQ.
So, can you take us through the process of picking one sense and focusing on it? And is this the same or similar to, let's say, meditation, where they often say, focus on your breathing, the air going in your nose, coming out of your nose, every breath you take, it fills your chest, etc.
Yes, indeed. It is exactly that, except that the clever thing that this does is that it doesn't make you try to hold on to that for a long time. Because when you try to get someone to meditate for 5 minutes, usually about 10 to 15 seconds into it, they start to distract themselves. And then their judge comes in, the saboteur, the judge, comes in to evaluate how they're doing at this meditation. And the judge, of course, being harshly self critical, is going to say, Steve, you can't do this. Give up. You're no good at this. You just can't do it. Okay. So the judge is trying to get you to quit. The brilliance of this PQ rep idea is that you distract yourself, fine. It's okay. Just come back. So if you're doing it with breathing, you'd sit, you'd relax, and you'd slowly breathe in, slowly breathe out. And what you might pay attention to is actually the difference in temperature between when the air is going in and where the air is going out at the edges of your nose. So you do that for as long as you can, and then you forgive yourself for getting distracted and abandoning it, and you get back to it. So you can do it with any sense. You can certainly do it with breathing. In the East, they call that the royal road to meditation. because it's the most effective. But you can also do it just rubbing your fingers together. Close your eyes and rub your fingers together, paying full attention to how the fingers feel together. Okay. You can do it with all your fingers and run your hand down the other hand very, very slowly, noticing every bump, every fingerprint, any ring, any scar, anything like that. So it's essentially you pay attention to one sense in the present moment, and that brings you back to the here and now so that you're not afflicted by feelings from the past or worries about the future or anxiety or anything else. Okay.
Wow.
It's a beautiful place, and you can get there like that.
Can you also, Steve, use this in a challenging situation? Let's say you're at work, there's a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got anxiety,
Yes.
whatever it might be. So while you're sitting there and people are talking and maybe they're going to call on you at some point, can you just do this? They're not even going to
Sure.
know. And I've often heard even tapping, emotional freedom
Yes.
technique, EFT,
Yes.
that,
I'm familiar with that.
even under the desk, you could be just tapping to refocus on something instead of what the monkeys are chattering about.
Right. Exactly. And there are actually some subtle ways that you can do that with visual, even in the middle of a conversation with someone. Like, for instance, if in the first 30 seconds that you're talking with someone, while you're talking, you pay attention to exactly how they look. If you're in person, you can look carefully at their eyes. Now, if someone is really fixed on your eyes, you'll probably think they're a very good listener. And you're focusing on just how interesting their eyes look. How they're not just one color, probably. You're looking at the shape of their eyes and so on. So you can do that. You could do it when you're meeting someone. If you shake their hand, focus on that while you're doing it and use that to bring yourself back into the present moment. When I was teaching this at the community college last week, um, as I was standing there, when I got a challenging question, what I did was I was paying attention while I was listening carefully to the question. I was paying attention to my little toe. Just
Hmm.
talk about inconspicuous. If you're curling your toes and focusing your attention on that feeling of curling your toes, finding your big toe, finding your little toe, and so on, it can bring you back into the present moment where you can really empathize, you can really listen, you can use the best parts of your brain. So, what happened in that case is while I was teaching this, I got a challenging question. I was able to answer it quite calmly. I was able to satisfy the person who'd asked the question that, yeah, he really heard me. And it just works.
So, question on that. Let's say you're talking with somebody and you have anxiety. Let's say you're meeting the owner of the company. You've
Mm-hmm.
never met this person before. They're taking a tour of the facility. You have anxiety. You meet
Mm-hmm.
this person. They're talking, and now you feel like the anxiety starting. If you're
Right.
focusing on something like the little toe, whatever it might be, are you
Mm-hmm.
going to miss part of the conversation because you're focusing on something else and not this in front of you?
Well, the beauty of this is no, you actually listen better
Hmm.
because what you're doing is you're quieting the competing monkey voices in your head, which are interrupting your listening. It's a fact that they've actually measured in a conversation, a normal conversation, how long is it before the other person quits listening to you? And it averages about 8 seconds.
Wow.
Eight
Hmm.
seconds. So within under 10 seconds, in a way, you've lost them or they've lost you if you're letting yourself be distracted. But if you're focusing on the present moment, it actually helps you listen much better. And
Hmm.
that's what the fellow who was uh, having a challenging conversation at first with the person he was living with, when she was trying to push his buttons, he was doing PQ reps and he was listening to her very carefully. And she felt heard. She knew that he was paying attention to her, and it worked very, very well. I like to say you can spoil a perfectly good fight that way.
Well, I'm focusing on my toe right now and hearing everything you're saying, just as a
See,
test.
it
I am
works.
being honest.
It
Um,
works.
yeah, it goes against logic because one would think if I'm taking the focus here and putting it someplace else, that I'm not going to be focused on the conversation or whatever it might be. And interestingly, you said usually somebody loses their attention after 8 seconds. I've often heard that a goldfish has an attention span of 8 seconds. So it's kind of the same thing in a way.
Yeah.
Wow. That being said, how do you keep somebody's attention? Let's say the other person, you engage them, you're talking, and you don't want to lose them. Any thoughts on that?
How to keep someone else engaged?
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah. Essentially, you want to be sure that you're listening because most of talking is listening.
Sure.
Are you really addressing what the other person asked? And how do you stay engaged with them? Well, part of the whole PQ universe is uh, looking at the mirror neurons. Are you familiar with the mirror neurons?
No.
There's some circuits in every human's head that help them understand what the other person is thinking and feeling. Okay. As we evolved, it was very, very useful if you could tell if someone who was coming towards you meant to hurt you or help you, the identification of friend or foe. And so we always can understand at a certain level how the other person is feeling. Now, if the other person is feeling upset, discouraged, you notice that. And if you have control over your own feelings and your own reactions in your own mind, you can help that person because they will try to mirror you and you naturally try to mirror them. And if they're very upset and you're not, you can actually lead them out of their condition of being very upset or
Hmm.
very, very angry or very whatever they're feeling. You can share that feeling or at least recognize it using your mirror neuron circuitry. You can recognize how they're feeling, match them, understand them, and then you can lead them to a better place.
Interesting. It almost sounds as if we're harnessing our intuitive ability, if you will, loosely
Oh, yes.
described in a way. And isn't that, I guess, what empathy is? You feel what the other person is feeling.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And empathy is one of the superpowers that you have after you do the PQ reps, get your mind, heart, everything lined up in the present moment. Okay, so that you're not distracting yourself with memories of something else or worrying yourself about what might happen. You're not doing that. When you're fully present, different parts of your brain activate. And in the PQ terminology, what we call that is the sage powers. Okay,
Did
you've
you
got
say
this
sage? Sage?
sage, SAGE, right?
Yes.
Like the wise one.
Right, right.
And these sage powers are not available to you really when you're under stress. Because when you're under high stress, whether it's feeling terribly sorry for yourself or if it's feeling upset or angry about something, that's driving the chemistry of your brain back down toward what we used to call the lizard brain.
Sure.
And that lizard brain under high stress only has three choices that it can even imagine. So your only three choices when you're under very high stress are fight, flight,
Light.
or freeze.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And that's all you can think of when you're under stress. Well, you rub your fingers together, you pay attention to your breathing, you wiggle your toes, whatever it is that you use as a PQ rep to bring yourself into the here and now, it changes the brain chemistry. It literally changes the brain chemistry from being this stress-based bath of cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline. Uh, Instead of that, it changes the brain chemistry so that you start to get a little oxytocin. You start to get a little bit more of the higher functions of your brain available. And we break it into 5 sage superpowers. Okay. The first one is empathy. Because when you're under stress, you're not feeling very empathetic. So you've got empathy, you've got curiosity, you've got creativity, you've got all manner of things that you can't do when you're under stress, which is a long way of saying what I do in my coaching, which is I help people think differently to get better results.
I want to, in the couple of moments we have left, reverse engineer this. There
Okay.
are some people, I have a friend who's a nurse. She's very empathetic. And you can see that when she works, she takes too much of it on
Yep.
and has to take a day off every 2 days because she's just so drained. And I tell her, you're empathetic. You need to realize that you're taking everything on from somebody else and it's pulling you down. How do we shut it off?
You can shut it off with PQ reps.
Same exact. I thought I've
It,
had a
it,
feeling
it
you were going to say that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that is especially hard for nurses, and one of my best coaching clients is actually a nurse.
Wow.
And I'd like to help more nurses, in fact, because I understand that there's an epidemic of burnout, and I can help with that. I can help somebody get out of the state of burnout where they're telling themselves all manner of things through their saboteurs
Sure.
that are making them really, really unhappy. And especially for nurses who are in direct patient care, when you're empathizing a little too much and you're taking it on yourself, you can learn to recognize when you're doing that and reframe it. Go back to your sage powers. And instead of just using empathy, you can use a little bit of creativity. You can use the other sage powers to
Ah,
get yourself out of that drawn into their pain issue that nurses sometimes face. It's the difference between feeling what they're feeling and recognizing what they're feeling so you can help them.
and I see that clearly now. You could take that empathy that's pulling you down and turn that into creativity in a creative way to help them. Let's say, they're in bed, you have a medical challenge, whatever. Oh, wait a minute. Let me prop the pillows a certain way. I'm completely hypothetical here, but just a different way of still helping them, but you're not taking on their energy. Steve, I got to
Right.
tell you, fantastic talking about this today. Um, and practical real world advice that you can implement right away and see fast results. And that's what you do. If somebody wants to move their life forward, and again, you identify nurses, that's one segment. You help anybody and everybody in the sales force, the workforce, business, professionals, whatever it might be. How do we connect with you?
Well, they can call me on my cell phone. They can go to my website. And if they go to the website, I'm still working on it. It doesn't yet say that it's all about PQ. It talks about business process improvement, some other things that I do. But
Sure.
if they contact me through the website, please, they should put PQ in the subject line so that I'll know that it's not a Russian bot. Because I get about 50 emails a day from
Yep.
spam uh, and phishing and things like that. So if they could just put PQ in it, I'll respond as quickly as I can. We can set up a Zoom session just like this to see if I might be the right choice to help them.
Positive intelligence.
Yep.
Yeah. Great
The
talking with you. Yeah.
and my website, by the way, is Effective Learning for Growth.
EffectiveLearningForGrowth.com.
Yes, that's the website. And they can reach me through that, or they can just call me on the phone at 252-258-4698.
Thank you for today. Thank you for the insight. Really, really an eye opener. And I'm backing it up because this is stuff that I've learned along the way. But I didn't know that there was an official approach to it as we talked about today.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.